So on to segment number 9, and this one is also a very extensive one. And so for me, also one of the biggest reasons why the CFA program may be losing its prestige, and by extension the CFA Charter as well, is the recent and the anticipated steep pricing hikes that the CFA Institute has announced over the years and will continue to happen into 2026. As you can see, before 2023, now keep in mind this is the date in which the prices were enforced, but the announcements, of course, came earlier. But this was at the time were the prices that were applicable when I got my charter. But and keep in mind there may be more price updates that are not in here, but I could not find the information. But this gives a very good picture of where what we are talking about and where we stand at the moment. And so, as you can see here, and let's just focus on because you have all these values for early registration, standard, late registration, which no longer exists, the retake, a failed exam, the reschedule, meaning if you want to postpone the exam to a later exam window, or you want to reschedule your the location of the exam. I had to do this once for the level 3. I have to request a transfer of one exam from one location to another. So I remember that I paid $250, and for level 1 I also paid $150 for the printed version of the curriculum. I was in Portugal. I paid also $20 in shipping costs at the time. This was in September of 2018. But focusing, because I think this is the most important thing, in focusing on the minimum total costs. What is the minimum cost that it takes to complete the program at any of these different price structures? And because at the end of the day, capable and disciplined candidates should be able, and of course with enough time on in their schedules, should be able to pass all 3 levels at the first try, and have the minimum cost of the exam, go through the program at the minimum cost. Of course, not factoring in the potential use of prep providers, which of course increase the cost, but that's more of an arbitrary situation depending on the candidate. But as you can see, from pre-2023, the cost was $2,400, and between 2023 and 2024, it went up by 27%, so increased to a little bit over $3,000. And for 2025, so this year, also increased a further 12%, so a little bit over 3,400. And it is now confirmed that next year, 2026, because the enrollment fee will disappear, but the prices of the exams will more than compensate for the loss of the enrollment fee. The price will increase by a further 2.9% to over 3,500 euros. And so, compounding all these increments, this accounts for an increase of 46.7% in just over 4 years. Now, of course, this is way beyond the rate of inflation, and this probably has to do with the restructuring of the program, the transition to computer-based testing, but we'll get to that in a moment. And also keep in mind that we are not factoring in here in these costs the membership dues once you get the charter, that you need to pay to get the charter, and the cost of the calculator, which of course you might expect to pay anything between 50 euros or, well, yeah, 50 euros, 70, 80 euros. I think in most regions should be the cost of the calculator. And of course, not including prep providers, as I mentioned. But now I want for you to get a better idea of what extent this program has become quite expensive. I decided to make a comparison with other credentials, financial credentials, which what I would usually call the triple crown of the financial industry, which is the CFA, the CIA, the Charter for Alternative Investment Analyst, and the FRM, the Financial Risk Manager program. And so, making a comparison here with the CIA, you can see that this, of course, this is for 2026, and these are also the costs that I faced when I got my own not when I got the charter, because I did not ask for the charter, but I went through the level 2, and so if I want I can ask the charter, but I just passed the exam, the level 2, the final exam, because I used the CFA stackable credential program, and so I was allowed to skip to level 1. But as you can see here, sorry, as you can see here, the costs have been in place at least since 2022. These are the costs that I faced back in 2022, and upon reviewing the CIA website, these costs still remain, which of course it's a different approach than the CFA program. And as you can see here, the minimum cost is way below, is 1,130 euros less. But I to make some justice to the CFA program, because the CIA program offers very, very little resources in terms of practicing, to practice questions, and only offer the mock exam. I think it's not reasonable to try to pass the exam without using some resources from prep providers. And so the difference, if we account for those, we have to assume that the cost difference will be lower than this one. However, I found it interesting that the membership dues for the CFA Society is $275 just for the CFA Institute, and then you have to pay the society dues, which can be anything from 25, 50 euros all the way up until 300 or 400, depending on the country in which the society is located. But the funny thing is that the cost is somewhat comparable if you live in a developed country, but if you live in an emerging market, and this emerging market, the criteria is whether it is part of an index, the emerging markets index, which is of course a financial index. You pay only you can have the charter for only 100% $100 per year, or 200 in every 2 years, and so I think it's a very interesting and very positive, I believe, difference, because if we account that in many of these countries the cost of living is the salaries and the average net worth of the people is lower. So I think it's good. It's good to have that. Also, the printing curriculum is, at least during my time, they don't announce it on the website, but I received an email that it was only $50, in comparison with 150 when I did it, the program, and 250 now. They don't allow for reschedule. You have to show up at the date and at the place you want it. Otherwise, you have to forfeit the registration, which is bad. A retake is less expensive than going for the exam for the first time. But nonetheless, I think this structure, because it has been stable for so long, and of course the program is cheaper. it's even if you go through the two programs. Now, keep in mind, it's one level less. It's only two exams. Here are three, but still, I think the cost is more or less. Um, it's more or less comparable. Keep in mind that it would be like 1,200 per level, because you then, by diluting the enrollment fee across the levels, you'll pay the less you'll pay more or less the same amount of money that you'd pay here, because there are three levels. So basically, the CFA program brought the cost of the program to be in line with the CIA, except of course if you account for the fact that stackers only have to go through one exam, and so it's more or less half the price. But I found this difference is good. I think it's a good it's more favorable than the CFA program in this case. But if we compare with the FRM, which of course is only two levels, but the cost is less than the CIA, it's much more cost competitive. You also have the enrollment fee, but the exams are cheaper. It's funny because also you can reschedule for free once within the same time window, because one exam window has several days. If you schedule for one day, but if for some reason you can't make it, you know you will not be able to make it, you can change to another day within the same window for free once. Then for future times you have to pay. The curriculum is more expensive if you want a printed version. I don't know how much shipping costs or taxes there are, because I didn't do this program. But the membership dues, you pay them but once, but then for future years, you don't lose the membership or the designation if you don't pay, which is also interesting. I think it loses some exclusivity in that regard, but yeah, it is the way it is. But what really shines there is at the average cost of a year is 800, and in here, of course, is much higher, is over 1,000. It's about 1,000, 1,100, something like that, or close to between 1,100 and 1,200, which is also the same average cost here is a little bit less than 1,200. But yeah, the program minimum cost is more than twice of the FRM, but of course, keep in mind that this is one more exam than in here. But still, it's a difference. If we account for the cost per exam, it's more expensive, the CFA program, and the cost is comparable to the CIA candidates who go for the stackable program, but keep in mind that the stackers are going only through one exam. But nonetheless, the CFA program has become more expensive, and it was not. It became more expensive than the FRM and became comparable with the CIA. But now, in terms of the reasons why the CFA Institute felt that this was necessary, this price hike was necessary, is to partially reflect the intensive suits of CFA program enhancements, which include practical skills modules, which I must say some of them are very good, are a positive development, and I will talk about that later on at a later in a later section of in a later video, and the choice of specialized pathways for CFA for level 3 candidates in private markets and private wealth. And the CFA Institute claims that also regularly reviews its pricing with respect with inflation and other economic conditions. Well, 46.7% in just 4 years is way above inflation, but yeah, whatever. Nonetheless, in my view, and again, this is my opinion, I think there may be other reasons for the price hikes. And and also this is a contentious point. The CFA Institute is a non-profit entity, and so despite being a non-profit entity, clearly it has adopted a more commercial stance in its value proposition, and possibly the reason is because during the COVID pandemic there was much fewer exam registrations, and of course this caused a drop in revenues. If I want one thing that I can show you here is if we this is the annual report from 2024, as you can see here, CFA Institute annual report fiscal year 2024, and you can see here that let's just focus on a global level, which is this dark blue column here. You'll see that for 2020, 2021, 2020 it was very reduced, but it recovered. And keep in mind, I don't have the information here, but the registrations have increased every year pre-pandemic during the decade of the 2010s. But it reached a peak here at 2022, and then the registrations, the exam administrations, which are of course correlated with the registrations, declined since then and have been declining. And another page here of the same report, you'll see here that despite the reduction in exam administrations, the revenues rose, and of course this caused an increase in income from operations, despite the operating expenses have also increased. But having the breakdown here of the revenues and the costs, you'll see that the largest portion of the increase in revenues was because the credentialing and the certificate programs. There was even some less revenue here from industry engagement, but for the most part, the increase, if you look at all these entries, the main factor that caused the revenues to increase was the credentialing and certificate programs. Of course, it was also responsible for the increase in costs, the major responsible for the increase in costs. But this also showed that in the case of the CFA Institute, this was an attempt most probably to make up for the loss of revenues that came from previous years because of less exam registration. So they tried to maximize the revenue per exam registration. Now, I also admit that the transition to computer-based testing also requires, for example, entering into licensing deals with third-party exam vendors, for example, Prometric, to administer the exams in much more frequent testing cycles. Now, recall previous videos that I did. There are more testing. The frequency of exam windows have increased over the course of one single year, and not only there are more testing windows, exam windows, but also offered in a much greater number of locations. Before, you would cram 400, 500 candidates in a conference room in a hotel to do the exam. So a hotel with 3 or 4 conference rooms, you could administer 4 different exams. Exams at all levels, I should say. And so now the exam locations are much spread out over different locations, and so this also increases the costs, and I get that. But on the other hand, if we keep in mind the efficiency of computer-based testing also requires less work by people, because everything is much more automated. You don't need as many proctors and surveillance done by human eye in the exams as you do with surveillance cameras in testing rooms as you do as it happens today. So I think computer-based testing uh, reduces some costs, increase other ones, and so I don't see the reason much of a reason. Of course, there is some reason why computer-based testing is more expensive, but also there are other factors that make it less expensive. And so, yeah, this reinforces the willingness to maximize the revenue brought in from each exam registration. Now, I believe that it's also the case that uh, they are trying to portray the CFA, the institute is trying to portray the program as a premium credential relative to the other ones, especially because now with the specialized pathways, it's further overlapping the CIA because of the private markets and the private wealth. And sorry, private markets in the case of CIA, and in the case of the certified financial planner, the private wealth, and other technical certifications, such as in the practical models, for example, the on Python that now they provide. Of course, this expands the scope of the program to other areas, more areas than before. So this also, I believe, increases the cost because you have to bring in the knowledge to make those modules. So on one hand, I understand that, but, and this is the crux of this point, is that I think this pricing strategy brings several problems that need to be considered. Is that the CFA Charter may no longer be seen as a meritocrat credential because of the pricing. Now, before the low barrier of entry, the low price meant that any candidate, even with a few resources, as long as he has the grit, the commitment, and the discipline to go through the program and study and prepare himself for the exams and really get to know the content, it would be able to succeed. And the amount of resources that you can expend in the program was much less of a factor. Now, with this new price structure, and given the fact that there are 3 exams, the cost per exam is comparable to the CIA, but these are 3 exams, so it is more expensive. Many these good quality candidates may now be priced out of the program, and especially this is more likely to happen in less developed nations. And it may be hard to understand for some people why the CFA Institute, being a non-profit entity, may adopt this stance, such a hard commercial stance towards its stakeholders, and so this may lead to some damage of the brand image, and also the reputation of excellence, because the excellence may be there, but the program has the curriculum has been in some ways, as I mentioned before, made a little bit easier, and so it becomes more of a commercial purpose rather than an excellence endeavor. So this may cause some damage in terms of its reputation. And this also reflects the fact that and I'm going to show you as well, let's see what it is. There is another one which I wanted to show you. Well, by the way, the number of CFA Institute staff has remained stable over the past few years, and there are less people, so there are now less salaries to be paid. Probably those became higher, but still. Yeah, this is the one I wanted to show you. Probably I will address this in another video, but for now, let's just keep it as it is. As you can see here, the CFA Institute membership Net Promoter Score. So Net Promoter Score meaning how much would you recommend the product or service to a friend and colleague. And as you can see, from the perspective of the CFA Institute membership and the CFA societies, the trend is not good. And the members are becoming a little bit less good promoters, so they are a little bit more on detractors and less promoters. So the way the CFA Institute is being viewed at the moment is not as good as it used to be. And yeah, even though, of course, as you can see, the membership has been increasing, even though I think the rate of increase has stagnated a little bit, has been increasing more slowly, but still, yeah, I think some of the erosion of its brand image may be unaccounted for this. But continuing on, another problem, and I think this also is a big one. Candidates with less resources are more likely to be unable to continue in the program, and I'm talking about the ones who decide to go into the program, even though they have less resources, but for some random life events, they are forced to drop out of the program, or because they fail an exam, they can afford to continue. They cannot bear the added expenses of failing an exam and having to repeat it, and so this is more likely to further bolster the dropout rates. And the main problem is that these dropout rates may no longer be exclusively to the lack of dedication, lack of commitment of the candidates, but also because of an inability to afford it. Now, I know that there are scholarships, but the scholarships are limited, and they are much fewer, much less than the amount of candidates that may be priced out of the market or forced to give up the program because they simply cannot afford it. Now, and another issue related to this one is that because now the CFA Institute is now giving more emphasis to its badges for intermediate levels, the level 1 and the level 2 that I explained in the previous video, it's more likely that these candidate dropouts will try to leverage as much as possible those achievements in those professional careers, to the point of perhaps even trying to misrepresent what those intermediate levels really mean. And because of that, this can lead to some of the erosion or loss, or even loss, of the signaling mechanism that the program badges convey to employers. And this is something that I also felt during my career, they already give more preference to experienced job applicants rather than the ones that simply have the charter like me. And this preference towards experienced candidates will be even more biased towards them, regardless of whether they are charter holders or not, to the detriment of less experienced candidates, job candidates, I should say, even if the latter ones are charter holders. And so this will aggravate even more the situation of the ones that went through the program but don't have much. They don't have the same level of experience of the most experienced job candidates. And so yeah, it's going to be even more difficult for them to get the job that they are looking for. And also, and I think this is a legitimate reasoning, because it's part of human nature, is that the higher the price, the higher the level of expectation of future benefits that new candidates and charter holders will place upon attaining the CFA Charter. People will always tend to think, all right, I'm paying so much, I'm dedicating so much time to this, there must be much more benefits in terms of my career, in terms of my compensation, than relative to my compensation in career if I don't do the program. And because we know that as the job market becomes increasingly more competitive over time and professional credentials lose value as they become more universal, we know this happens with university degrees as well. These people are more likely to also become disappointed and regret having gone through such an expensive program, in the same way that many people now that go through university degrees and they study a lot, uh, they don't they decide they don't go directly into the job market, they prefer to study, and because they have the expectation of having a higher salary and a better job if they graduate. But you see now, and for example, in the United States, this reality comes up a lot. They see that, all right, I'm going through into student debt, which is common in the United States, and then my degree is worth almost nothing, and I don't get any career prospects that I thought I would have, and now I have all this debt to pay for my university degree. So I think the same sort of feeling is likely to happen to CFA candidates and charter holders. Charter holders, assuming they finish the program, because the opportunities that they may feel they may be able to get may not be there for them, and but the price that they paid to went through this program was so much higher, and so the expectations may be are even more likely to not be met. And so, basically, in conclusion, um, by enacting this change, I think the CFA Institute may unintentionally price out many capable and disciplined candidates, especially those that live in less developed countries. This can erode, they may unintentionally erode the program's brand and reputation, as candidates' financial resources become as important as their discipline and their excellence. They also may also increase the program's dropout rate, increase the likelihood of misrepresentation of the program's badges to land job roles and to advance their careers. Forgot here, yeah, the point in comma. Also, of course, with all of this can lead to dissatisfaction, disillusion, and possible frustration among candidates. So I think this is something that really needs to be considered among candidates to really make their best possible decision given their life situation, and of course now their resources at their disposal. And yeah, that's basically it.